Why is biblical counseling so essential for the local church?
Wow, that is a really good question to ask because, and it's a question a lot of churches don't even ask. Because the big emphasis in a lot of local churches is upon the public ministry of the Word of God. And that's important. That's vitally important. Preaching is critical to the local church. The right kind of preaching, expositional preaching, is important to the local church. But the early church understood that it wasn't just the public teaching of the Word of God that was important, but people also had individual personal problems. And so there had to be a private ministry of the Word of God. You can see this in Acts chapter 20 and verse 20, where the Apostle Paul's dealing with the Ephesian elders, and during his admonition of them, he knew, in fact, in the context of Acts chapter 20 is he is leaving them for the last time, and so he's giving them last-minute instructions to on how to deal with the ministry and how to handle the ministry of the Word of God in their life and in their church. And he talks about they were supposed to follow his example. And his example was one of the public teaching of the Word of God, verse 20 says, and then he says, then he went from house to house. In other words, he had private ministry of the Word of God as well. And that was the model of the other church. Later on in verse 31, he talks about the fact that he says how I didn't cease from admonishing you night and day for a period of 3 years with tears.
Wow.
So, and the word admonishment there is the Greek term noutheteo, where we get our word warning, admonishment, or counseling from, to counsel on it. So he counseled them. And in fact, the words there in the Greek language, he counseled each one of them, very specific, with tears. So that was the private ministry of the Word of God. So sometimes we talk about expositional preaching. That's vitally important. That's key. If you're not in a church with expositional preaching, then a person needs to get out of that and go to a church that does have expositional preaching. But then there needs to be also expositional counseling, where you're going into the Word of God and explaining how to deal with problems based upon what the Word of God has to say. That's expositional counseling.
Wow. Yeah.
So.